launch team wishes you good luck and Godspeed.
Space Monkeys blasting off on XCVM and the composable cross-multi-chain future. Back again, we have BrainJar, founder of Composable Finance, and Seun Lanlege, or the Web3 Philosopher, working to make the trustless bridging future not only a reality, but possibly an understatement. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hello, sir.
Great to be here.
Very nice to have you, BrainJar. Our listeners are already very familiar with you, and it's been great since the last time we spoke to learn more about the rest of your team. Seun, I know you used to work directly on Polkadot. Maybe we could start with you telling us a little bit about how your thinking has developed and evolved since the time before you joined Parity to how you're thinking today.
I started crypto back in 2017. Looking into the technology, understanding that it was actually software because I'd been seeing crypto around on the internet, and I just figured it's just one of the many, Ponzi scams that float around the internet. But then realizing at the end of 2017 that it was actually software, right? And it's like this new kind of software which is distributed. It's like powered by cryptography. It felt like a nerd snipe, and I just had to go down the rabbit hole and try to understand what this new technology enables. Aside, of course, just from like a payment system. Yeah. And then, reading the Bitcoin white paper, trying to play around with a few blockchain clients in Rust, then stumbling on a Parity job ad on the subreddits, on the Rust subreddits. Okay. And of course, applying and getting in because I'd been doing a lot of Rust open source contributions at the time. And then, working on the Parity Ethereum clients that was written in Rust, and then transitioning to Substrate. It's been a long journey, and at the beginning I had no idea what I was doing. I just sort of went along with my curiosity, but then working at Parity gave me a very fundamental perspective shift that this is not really about the technology, it's about a philosophy, it's about this idea of decentralization, it's about this idea of bringing power back to the people who create stuff for the internet. So working at Parity, working on the Substrate framework, being confused all the time, because I was basically out of my depth. I was working with technology that I really just learning on the job and trying to figure it out and trying to ask questions and trying to badger all the senior devs about what exactly I'm doing. Yeah. And it's only really now that I've left the company and I'm able to look back at my time and see or understand the things that I did, and everything is now coming into perspective. I first learned about Substrate at this team retreat. I'd seen the repo, but I didn't really understand it. And then we had this team retreat in Paris, and then Gavin Wood properly presented the idea, and that was also another mind-blowing moment for me, because I was like, okay, there's all these things that could be enabled if you just had a simple framework that allowed people to build their own blockchains. Mind you, I had already been looking into how to build blockchains, and I looked at the Bitcoin clients, I looked at all these other, the Ethereum client, and sure, they were great, but then, you would have to assemble a lot of parts to essentially build a blockchain. And then Parity was just essentially going to give people all these free tools and allow everyone to build their own blockchain. And that was amazing. I thought that was going to be the future. And clearly it is showing itself to be right now, because we're starting to see lots of different application layer blockchain frameworks like Cosmos SDK on the side. And I think we will still see more, in fact, because the idea of being able to spin up a new blockchain is still very new. Not a lot of people yet understand that concept yet. Understanding that blockchain is a philosophy, and then being exposed to that core philosophy, as a lot of the people at Parity were previously Ethereum people, and they just carried that ethos with them, and it's really, really an amazing environment, I would say, and sort of picking on that philosophy and then bringing that as well to Composable Finance.
Amazing. And you mentioned the Cosmos SDK there. You've kind of been trying to make Polkadot and Cosmos talk with each other, right? And we recently had the merge of the Beefy client into the Rococo testnet. Can you enlighten us a little bit more about what that's all about?
Yeah, definitely, happy to. So the story about the Beefy protocol getting merged to Rococo has it's been a bittersweet one, because so at Composable Finance, we're trying to build out trustless bridges from our parachain to other blockchains. One of them just happens to be the Cosmos ecosystem, who pioneered this whole IBC messaging protocol / framework. And from our perspective, we needed some sort of way to prove finality about our parachain messages to say a Cosmos SDK blockchain. And so there's Grandpa, and as you know, Grandpa is the finality gadget for Polkadot. But then Grandpa doesn't really provide the necessary APIs that parachain developers can easily use to do bridging. Plus, Grandpa finality proofs are just ridiculously massive. They are impractical to be used for verification. On say really really expensive contract environments, say the EVM, for instance.
Okay.
And so the bridges team, which is I think a new team in Parity, sort of figured this out. And they were tasked with, designing a bridging protocol that would allow for, cheaper, smaller finality proofs. And they came up with Beefy, and they've been testing it, on and off. And then at Composable Finance, we realized that if we're going to be able to bridge efficiently to other blockchains, we desperately need what the bridging team is working on, Beefy. And we pitched them that, hey, we could definitely come on board and try to help you guys out in any way we can. Because our whole tech stack literally sits on top of this technology. And so after a lot of back and forth, the bridging team wasn't really excited to work with us. I'll be honest with you. And we did send in a lot of PRs that eventually got closed because they just wanted to do it by themselves. And then, just imagine that bittersweet moment, like 2 months, 3 months after, and they alert us that, hey guys, we know you needed this stuff. It's now on the testnet. You can go play with it. So, it enables our bridges to the Cosmos ecosystem, as well as to other ecosystems that we will announce in the future.
One of the things I really admire about your team is that you guys just kind of get down and dirty and build whatever you have to build. Cosmos, has it always been on the roadmap?
I think it inherently was kind of always on the roadmap. Like the vision was always to have this kind of cross-ecosystem vision realized. And so, but I don't think we were as strongly gunning to develop Centauri until Sean and I really got talking in depth about it. And then we actually decided to really push it, because I think there was a lot of other, initially the actual maneuvering in the beginning was actually quite painful, because people were saying, oh, some other team has a grant, you guys should go talk to them. It was kind of weird, very, people almost discouraging us or pushing us away from even exploring this stuff. And so that, I think, inherently pushed the two of us to really want to own this and push this out.
What do you think that resistance was all about?
Nepotism. I would say nepotism.
I would agree. Honestly, it was really just we talked to so many different people. I think it took us a month to actually get to the point where we realized, okay, none of these people are going to help us. We need to do this ourselves, or else it's just never going to happen.
Okay.
And so I'm glad that we to be honest, the turning point for all of us was when we met with Jack Zampolin.
Right.
And he decided to actually, he was the first helpful person in this journey for us. And so I think, we were from there, then it became a super high priority item. And then we started thinking more and more, and quickly realized, okay, let's also just go sort of deep into IBC and have it have our parachain essentially become the first IBC enabled parachain.
How do you describe IBC? I mean, it's different than XCM.
Yeah, this is definitely for Sean. Go ahead, sir.
Okay.
All right. So the difference between IBC and XCM from a high level is that XCM was designed to be used by parachains, right? It's designed to be the messaging format for parachains to parachains. As you know, parachains are intended to be application chains in a sense. So it's kind of this naive implementation where, okay, if we think of parachains as specific, like application specific, and then you have two parachains that want to talk to each other, they could just communicate with XCM. But I think it's more likely that people will host smart contracts on parachains, and it becomes very tricky to integrate XCM into this sort of architecture. Okay. And for me, I think that's where IBC comes in, because IBC is actually designed from the beginning to be a messaging format between two applications, like not necessarily a blockchain, but instead just an application that manages its own state and can, process messages and send out messages. And one more thing is IBC is not, designed with any blockchain architecture in mind. In fact, the only requirement that your blockchain should have is that it has a light client protocol. If it has a light client protocol, then that's it. You can literally build an IBC module for your blockchain and provide that API to applications that live on your blockchain to use that to send and receive messages.
Okay.
And then, of course, luckily for us, the parachain architecture, allows for light client proofs, because Polkadot was designed to be decentralized from day one, and so they have this Grappa protocol that then we can then build Beefy on top of. That gives us more efficient light client proofs that then allows IBC to exist on any parachain, to be honest.
Okay, that's interesting. So just real quick, light clients are already here on Polkadot? They're already in use?
Yes, they are. They are. We have Grandpa light clients already, but then, like I said, for more efficient data costs and computational costs, the bridging team came up with Beefy. And so we will see Beefy go live sometime this year. Primarily because there are plans, and it's been floating in the ether, for a Polkadot to Kusama bridge. Yeah. And this will really be enabled by Beefy, not Grandpa.
Do you ever see parachains communicating with IBC?
100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah? Okay.
100%.
Yeah. What would be the advantage of doing that instead?
I mean, so the thing is, to open channels between parachains, you kind of need to do a Polkadot governance proposal, all that jazz. Yes. It's a waste of time.
Okay.
And besides, these governance proposals, they require a lot of dots. For teams that just want to, quickly prototype an idea and send messages to another chain, they don't have the luxury to start trying to do all that, right? And that's where IBC comes in. It gives you the same trustlessness as XCMP, but you don't have to do a governance proposal to open channels. It's entirely up to the two blockchains to open up a channel between each other.
Okay, got it. So through your Centauri bridge and connecting to these, what would you say, IBC?
I would say to IBC-enabled blockchains in general.
Okay. This is a huge component of your XCVM. BrainJar, can you give us a broad overview of what the vision of XCVM is?
One of our core value adds as a team is we're probably the earliest people who actually had novel ideas about what a cross-chain application would actually look like from both a DeFi perspective, but also other things as well. And I think it's naive to imagine protocols like Layer 0, etc. Just basically just, first of all, it's not trustless. So we're not going to get into that unless you want us to, but
I'll link to your little graphic below with the
yeah. But I think that traditional interoperability solutions don't come inherently with orchestration layers, right? So even if you let's just take Axelar or Layer 0 as an example, right? Sure. Okay, you have some nice packages, you have some tools and stuff, but fundamentally, you still need to do a lot of the connecting between two different contracts yourself. It really makes for the experience, the experience ends up becoming number one, heavily EVM oriented, and number two, you have to look at things in a very function by function basis. So you have to think about okay, if I have Layer 0 pass this message from this chain to this chain, what does it do?
Right.
And so this is very, very bottom up building on top of an interoperability solution. And so the other approach, which I don't think people are going to realize is valuable until we show how much faster and easier it is to build a cross-chain application using XCVM.
Yeah.
But the better approach is, well, write something and deploy it on our Parachain, and then have this orchestration layer basically orchestrate messages passing from chain to chain to do a specific desired outcome. And that's like very much so like top-down development. And so like the hope is that XCVM becomes a framework where people see kind of like not what they want to do, not how they want to do things, but can specify what they want to do, and then sort of like abstract away the complexity of like needing to, you know, find specific contract ABIs for, you know, performing a swap or like routing something for lending, stuff like that. And honestly, too, like when you really think about if TradFi is going to actually integrate with DeFi, are they really going to want to, you know, make a decision about a chain and you know, from there, like actually build something on that chain and then tap into it? Like more likely they're going to just want to just tap into a series of SDKs and just like communicate with those like endpoints. And for us, like that's really the vision for XCVM, is essentially becoming a framework where someone can specify in a contract what they'd like to accomplish, and this application becomes a natively cross-chain dApp that taps into the various transport layers that we're building, including IBC, XCM, Mosaic, etc. So in one sentence, what XCVM really is just introducing this concept of cross-chain smart contracts.
Okay, because as I understand it right now, like let's take an example like Sushi. They have to build basically like a fortress on every chain they want to be present on, and then they need to figure out how to make all those different instances of the same application communicate.
Exactly. So for instance, if Layer 0 wants to like, say, builds endpoints between the different Sushi instances to do whatever, they would have to basically like go function by function, contract by contract, and specify like, you know, we want this message to be passed to this chain to do this specific thing. And it just becomes like a bit of a grueling process, I would say.
Yeah.
Whereas in our approach, we would just write a contract that says, okay, like do this, this, and this. And then basically messages are just getting orchestrated according to the contract deployed on our chain. So it's very just like, it's subtle, but it's very different like in practice.
This place of deployment, it's CosmWasm, right?
Yeah, so they're going to be deploying it onto our Parachain.
Okay.
But they're going to be writing it in the CosmWasm framework, which is Rust. We chose CosmWasm as the framework because people already are using CosmWasm. Everything on Terra is written in CosmWasm.
Right.
So like, and then multiple chains, Osmosis, Juno, etc., in the Cosmos ecosystem are using CosmWasm. So I think maybe some people will be unhappy that we chose CosmWasm versus Ink.
Right. And Ink is the just more mature code base, I suppose.
I mean, to be honest, like the reason, like one of the main so two key things, right? First of all, no one really uses Ink right now. So like, and there's already been, and I think CosmWasm has already been battle tested, and like the fact that there's billions of dollars already in CosmWasm contracts makes me believe that like it's just, if we're gonna go to market, it's the better go to market strategy.
Yeah.
Number two, just seeing like how quickly like our XCVM lead 0x Code Jug, seeing how quickly he's been able to like get abreast of CosmWasm versus Ink, and seeing his experience with both has made me feel that other developers would face the same type of efficiency experiences.
Sean, what are you seeing as far as developer adoption going with Wasm smart contracts? I actually didn't know about CosmWasm. I thought we were, still waiting on more people to catch on.
Yeah, I mean, I I'm like everyone else in the Polkadot ecosystem who is sitting on the sidelines waiting for ink to just rise up from the ground and just take over the Wasm contract environment. But, that hasn't happened.
No.
And, there's now doubts that it will ever happen in the first place. So I think it makes sense to explore alternative contract environments. CosmWasm is growing. It has a developer ecosystem. I think that's really all that matters at this point.
I definitely agree. I think we had to come to a decision at some point, right? Where we were like, how are we going to do this? And I think that the single biggest thing is just adoption, right? If there's already like a bunch of people learning CosmWasm, like to do a bunch of stuff within Cosmos, if you see all the big chains like Osmosis integrating CosmWasm, you definitely start to realize that better to start from square one than square zero.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I would say CosmWasm was built with IBC in mind.
Right.
So it's already designed. I don't think people are using CosmWasm at the moment as a cross-chain smart contracting framework that much, just because it's still very early, but it was designed with IBC in mind.
Before we leave the whole Cosmos discussion here, I'm just curious, in that part of the crypto world, what's one or two things you're seeing on Cosmos that are just super cool, like you think people in Polkadot should know about it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I think IBC is very underrated. I think how we're approaching kind of expanding IBC to other ecosystems, etc., is I think going to be long term a bet that will pay off for sure. So I think IBC is definitely heavily underrated. I think as far as new products and new things coming out, I mean, Osmosis has really I think flawlessly executed on their DEX plans, and yeah, honestly, hopefully we can replicate that type of success with Pablo. But yeah, I would say interchain accounts is something that's super interesting, being able to essentially access your account, your assets on one chain while basically being interacting with your account on another chain. I think that's very bullish. I don't think we have a similar concept in DOT.
No.
Right?
There's
There's
a process to making them usable on another chain. You have to teleport them over.
We might even consider down the line adapting interchain accounts for a composable name service type of concept. So being able to interact with assets and other chains with one set of accounts basically. So I don't know. I think we're barely scraping. What's really bullish about Cosmos, I think, is they have the rate with which development happens and shipment of things like interchain accounts, etc. They seem to just be continuously delivering on these core interoperability features. But it does take a while for developers to actually understand, okay, what can I actually do with interchain accounts, right? Okay. And so I think it's ripe. It's an ecosystem ripe for somebody who is smart and can understand what a cross-chain application looks like to go in and use these primitives. And I think we're trying to be that player essentially.
Going forward, as this interoperability concept becomes more prevalent in the minds of a lot of people who are in the crypto space, eventually everyone's just going to fall back and just see the IBC for what it really is, an open standard that was blockchain agnostic from day one and provided really all you needed out of the box.
What do you think the people at Cosmos should understand more about Dotsama that would really open their eyes?
I would say definitely the technology. Polkadot, Substrate, all these technologies are built from the ground up by people who had experience building blockchains, multiple blockchains. In fact, the PICA team had built the Ethereum client from ground up. They had built the Zcash client from the ground up. And so when it comes to designing and architecting, blockchain systems that are highly efficient, highly scalable, that provides very, very flexible developers, very flexible APIs to developers. Substrate is definitely leading the pack on that one. One of the things that I would say is that when I was at Parity, everything in Substrate had to be generic. Everything in Substrate had to be, configurable. And at the time, I was very, very irritated because, number one, it introduced like the massive compilation time to Substrate. Substrate is notoriously slow to compile because of the generics and compiler resolving all its generics. But now working at the application layer on the Parachain, if these things weren't as generic and as configurable as they are, it would be very, very painful to do IBC, for instance. Like we're able to implement this whole palette IBC subsystem on our Parachain, right? And so I'll definitely say that the Substrate framework is way ahead of the pack. The idea of shared security as well, having a single blockchain that has other blockchains that derive their security from it is also another idea that's way ahead of the pack. And I think we're already seeing people coming up with this, like with AVAX subnets and
right.
And I still think we'll see more and more hubs. I think there's Octopus Network with their app chain as well. So these are concepts that I would say are also way ahead of the pack. Runtime upgrades. Having the business logic for your blockchain being Wasm, and then having that code be stored on the blockchain itself, and then having this sort of on-chain governance that allows you to upgrade the logic of the blockchain. Like it has allowed Polkadot to deploy features on a piece by piece basis. They recently just released the XCM for Polkadot, so like also being able to upgrade the runtime logic of your blockchain is amazing. This not having to fork and then coordinate with validators and then risk people saying no to your changes and just spawn off their network does wonders.
Yeah, I'm curious, like with all the development you're talking about on Cosmos, like how do they get that done? Are they constantly forking, or is it stuff that doesn't require a fork?
No, definitely it's constant forking. I think it's not, you have to coordinate with all the validators. Basically you have to, all your validators are essentially hive mind, right? Whereas on chain, if the upgrade process was on chain and people could vote for it, then you could then vote for things that are good for the network and not just developers coming up with whatever they like and then basically forcing everyone else to agree to these changes.
Very cool. Now you guys are doing a demo of XCVM at Decoded at the end of next month. I think you're also going to have something there for people to play with.
Yeah, so actually this is a good time to actually just announce we're actually setting up like sort of like side event around Polkadot Decoded. It'll be like a 2-day event, kind of like Amsterdam style. Yeah. We're calling it Composable Decoded because I think it's like the first time that like not only, like I'm going to conferences now, like going to the Gateway to Cosmos conference in Prague. Like we're also getting a lot of we're sort of like now realizing that COVID is over kind of. Yeah. And now we're like trying to actually get out there. So we're doing like a 2-day event. So yeah, there's the workshop that I'll be doing regarding XCVM in Berlin for Polkadot Decoded. After that, there will be a 2-day sort of like we're going to have panels with people from Cosmos, people from Parity, etc. But also like interspersing some workshops as well where people can play around with XCVM, and hopefully we can attract some developers to come in and really just think about like what type of applications are possible. Because I tweeted something recently. I was like, yeah, the same 5 cross-chain apps get used by like all of our competitors whenever they talk about the cross-chain future. Okay. And I think it's really true, right? Like when you look at Axelar, you look at Connex, you look at Layer 0, like these guys don't really know exactly what cross-chain applications mean. Right. Like they kind of I almost feel like they just copy paste like a lot of the stuff I wrote about back in like July when no one was reading any of my stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's really what it is. It's like, yeah, we're going to build all these interoperability solutions, etc. But if we don't have any innovative people thinking about what a cross-chain app could do beyond the basics, then none of these projects really matter.
Okay, so you just announced you guys are doing your own event. What city is it going to be in?
It's Berlin, yeah. It'll be in Berlin.
You're doing Berlin. Sweet. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So we've covered Cosmos, the IBC side. That's going to connect to every blockchain that does light clients. Who else does light clients?
There's NEAR, ETH2, ZK, Sync, I believe. We're also like, I've also been playing around with the idea of like potentially spinning up this is something actually I wanted to talk to you about, Sean, at some point, but spinning up like a kind of like either our own subnet or some sort of like roll up that lives on top of Celestia or Sevmos or whatever, that could like serve as like a hub into EVM. Because I think it's going to be like, yeah, there are some chains that are just quite literally, they don't have light clients like Solana. I think we'll also see like in the future more and more EVM copy pasta L1s that don't support light clients.
In the meantime, for these EVM chains that don't have light clients, you have Mosaic.
That's right.
Okay, how's Mosaic going? Last I saw, you were cleaning up from an audit on V2.
So, like, really what we needed to do is like we took a really long and hard look after the Ronin exploit and decided to just make a lot of changes, to be honest. And we also like have a pretty complex roadmap for Mosaic Phase 3 and just like escalated some of those features up to Mosaic Phase 2 for not only for security, but also for like speed as well. And so, yeah, where we're at there is like hoping, over the next few weeks to like wrap up development there. And then kind of as soon as Mosaic is ready, we can then proceed with our like full launch timeline, which I'm really excited to just, do the PICA TGE and bridge assets, et cetera, et cetera.
Are you guys feeling ready to go on PICA?
Yeah, so I would say like the main reason why we have not done the PICA TGE yet is because we want to, like, to be honest, looking at all these other Kusama tokens just shipping with pretty much nothing to do with the token, like it's been kind of like
painful,
brutal to watch. And like I feel like honestly everybody will thank us for having delayed, because to be honest, we will, like, when PICA ships, it ships directly into an ecosystem that already has an AMM, that already has these fNFTs, that already has like a bunch of stuff that you can do with PICA itself. And so I think like in the grand scheme of things, like delay is always like a negative thing, but I think in a year from now, everybody will probably like look back and not remember the negativity surrounding the delay. I mean, Akala is doing this thing with Wormhole, which is like, I mean, I'm curious to see how that develops, but like we would just prefer to just use Mosaic and get the assets from EVM over.
I wanted to get your guys' opinion on something. In 10 years from now, is EVM still going to be a thing?
Yeah, I'm going to go with no. I'm going to go with no, actually.
Wow.
And the reason simply being that a lot of the bugs, a lot of the bugs that the EVM has had, can be fixed by just using a very simple, there's a word for this, defensive programming language / execution environment. And I think Rust, this is where Rust comes in, as well as this idea of a Wasm contract environment. And I think, a lot of people, even people at the Ethereum Foundation, are starting to look at Wasm execution environment. They call it the eWasm. Because, of course, as you know, the EVM was written in a hurry, it was written in a rush. Not really mature. And we're starting to see that, like, maybe we shouldn't secure billions of dollars with an execution environment that was written in a hurry. So, I don't think we'll see EVM that much anymore. I'm bullish for CosmWasm and, the sort of Cambrian explosion of Wasm contract environments, alternative Wasm contract environments that will happen. And the beautiful thing is that all these Wasm environments, they might provide like very different hosts APIs, like precompiles is what they call them in developer speak, but they will all essentially be compatible with each other. You could write a contract for CosmWasm and a new Wasm environment comes up, and it's still the same code, right? But then you're just using a different function for different things. And you could just put those things behind, feature flags. Oh, this function is used when we're in, say, the Solana Wasm environment, or this function gets used when we're in this CosmWasm environment, or this function gets used when we're in the Inc. Wasm environment. Like, it's all the same. I think that will definitely be the future of smart contracts.
Okay, so when Mosaic goes live, BrainJar, when do you think that's going to happen? Like, you don't have to give a hard date here, but is it like 2 weeks or more like 3 months or more or longer?
We're aiming to ship everything like Mosaic, Pablo, like PICA, TGE, all these things, ideally before Decoded.
Whoa, no way.
I mean, yeah, that is like the intention,
okay.
Right? Like,
yeah.
To be honest, because like, honestly, like being very real, we pretty much built DeFi primitives. We built Apollo, we built Cubic, we built Pablo, we built all these other palettes, literally because these things didn't exist and don't exist. And like, there are entire other teams dedicated to building a DEX or like dedicated to building an Oracle. And like, we just did those things. But the real focus, long-term focus of Composable is XCVM and is this bridging stuff that Seun and his team are doing. That's like what I would like our core focus to be into the future. And that's kind of why we're interested in like shipping all these things before Decoded, because like from my personal perspective, the long-term impact of the DeFi primitives is kind of just going to be like sparking interest into Kusama and Polkadot, hopefully putting it on the map more. And then I think from there, like really the focus should be XCVM. So I'd say like the DeFi stuff we've been doing is like simply because we're good at DeFi and like we just saw a need. But I think the real brain power now behind like the gigabrains on the team is going to like shipping XCVM. And so I think that's like this chapter of like the DeFi primitive building stuff that we needed to do was very simply for traction, not just for us, but also for the ecosystem. And then I think chapter 2 is this extreme focus on bridging and XCVM.
But it's not like you're ever going to let the DeFi stuff lay to rest, right? I mean, the more XCVM develops.
100%. Yeah, exactly. It just becomes like a full flywheel where these DeFi primitives are like getting constantly tapped into through like anything built with XCVM.
Right.
And honestly, I think these DeFi primitives like Angular, etc., the stuff that Labs is doing will all like kind of upgrade into an XCVM framework over like a longer term. So you can imagine Pablo not just being a DEX on Dotsama, but potentially also becoming like a proper DEX aggregator across all ecosystems. And so like the scope of these DeFi primitives becomes way more massive once XCVM ships.
Okay, so right now you have a bunch of people who very enthusiastically contributed to your Crowdloan. They're sitting on this promise of PICA tokens, which may or may not come before Decoded. Maybe you can like walk us through quickly what people are going to be able to do once they get those PICA tokens. Just walk us through like the first several steps of utility that these tokens are going to have.
So first of all, there's like going to be the ability to like LP with these things into the DEX. Bonding for Pablo, that's another opportunity. And then, of course, the fNFTs stuff like Chaos, basically locking up your PICA for a period of time to get an fNFT, which is also a brand new concept. I don't think any other team has really done that. But so that's going to be like the base level utility. And then like there's more things planned from there, like with specifically the fNFTs. So once we've seen enough adoption of the fNFTs, those things then control things like liquidity, gauges for emissions, and rewards for other DeFi protocols. So yeah, it becomes like the start of a pretty actively managed ecosystem.
The fNFTs, this is kind of taking a more fundamental view of NFTs, is just how much you locked, when you locked it, and when it becomes unlocked. And then that entitles the holder, whoever holds it, to rewards from the entire ecosystem. And
also like gives you, governance power, gives you the ability to direct the treasury once we have that palette live for like things like liquidity, mining, things like liquidity incentives, controlling like, potentially we could issue bonds directly from the treasury as well. So yeah. As far as like trying to actually, and then of course, like down the line, we're interested in, doing something like liquid PICA. So being able to stake your PICA with a collator set and have them essentially like stake the PICA that users have delegated to them. So that also just like earns a base level APY, similar to like, where the APY for Luna and UST comes from. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's going to be, I think the longer term goal is like PICA really becomes this cornerstone. Like I hope that everybody holding PICA essentially becomes like a active member of the community and like participates in governance and like really cares about how our treasury is getting spent and how it's getting used for like liquidity direction and stuff like that. You guys are doing an LBP on Pablo or PICA? That's right. Okay. On Pablo, yeah. On Pablo. Yeah. So okay. So essentially the day the TGE happens, there will be a pool of essentially like the first pool that will be on Pablo will be PICA USDC. So we'll do like a LBP to essentially like set the price for PICA. Yeah. And then from there, PICA like unlocks, everybody can claim, and the price for PICA. And then we like set up, of course, like a set of liquidity pools on Pablo that people can mess around with. Damn. Okay. Well, that's very exciting. Guys, I would love to talk a lot longer. Like, I'd like to know about like what happened with Bribe and how's the Composable Labs going and fitting in. We just released a vision post, by the way, for Labs just today. Oh, do you want to give us a quick rundown on what was there? Yeah, sure. So I think Labs really has been, I think the mission of Labs was always, let's build protocols utilizing Composable's tech stack. Okay, fine. But what we realized is actually there's also not really like an incubator for substrate-based DeFi at all. And I think Labs' scope has now expanded to become kind of this substrate native powerhouse for DeFi. And of course, they're still building on our tech stack, but I would say, now the focus really is, well, let's build, Angular, let's build several other products that are in the pipeline. But these things are essentially like Labs has its own team. They sync with us very regularly, but they have their own team. They have their own products. And these products will basically just live on Picasso. And then, of course, on the Polkadot parachain as well. So this is how, like, if a third-party team had a great DeFi idea and they wanted to build it on Substrate, this is where they'd go to make it happen. Essentially, yeah. It's kind of like a cross between an incubator and like just straight up running the projects ourselves. Because, like, to be honest with you, like what you just said about like founders showing up with a great idea, like if you can find me those people, that would be amazing. But like so far in our like research, there's very few and far between. So the approach that we decided with Labs is like quite literally, let's just build the ideas we have. Let's just run these projects ourselves. And in the future, like, can find people to remain dedicated to these things. Of course, as like Labs has 6-7 projects, like the current team won't be able to manage everything associated with it.
Okay, gotcha. So, okay, cool. So you'll get ideas kind of running, and then you'll find the teams to keep building them out.
I mean, I would say it's there's already kind of sub teams within Labs that work on specific products. I think essentially they're going to it's like build the products, ship them. They live within the Composable sort of brand. Like they'll be on our Discord. They won't have fragmented communities. Like it'll be sort of like within our umbrella.
Okay.
And then over time, the long-term vision is we want to actually approach this like nested parachain concept. And when that happens, then I would assume each one of these like sub teams needs to like, have their own, CEO and COO and all these like, it depends, right? It really just depends. Like I'm a firm believer in like projects, not necessarily like a single team being able to run multiple projects, as long as the community is composable between each project, It's really just about the community. Because you can spin up like 3, 4, 5, developers per team, and you're probably going to have a solid enough like core group. But
cool, Sean. What's you and your team working on right now?
Right. So we've just finished the implementation for Pilot IBC in Substrate. We're sort of benchmarking it currently. Then we're also trying to basically put all the things in place. The LAYR, the Beefy like client in IBC, put all these pieces in place for an integration test. We're working with the Strangelove team, that's Jack and his team, and they essentially maintain this IBC integration test suite, and we're working to integrate that into our sort of CI process and test out all the pieces we've been building out independently for like months now. And once everything is green on that end, we'll be deploying Centauri to the testnet. Basically open it up for anyone to play with, as well as developers to try and see what they can hack and build with it. So yeah, our goal is getting Centauri on testnet.
Okay, cool. Well, what's the first use case that's going to be utilized there? I
mean, obviously token transfers, but BrainJar, I'm sure, has other ideas.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the first like announcement we'll do is like we'll do a testnet to testnet like transfer between our chain and Osmosis, for instance. More on that like when it actually happens, but that's at least the intention. We've been talking a lot with Sunny, and like we should be in a position hopefully like end of this month to like talk more about this.
Okay, awesome. Well, guys, I just wanted to end on one last question. I have a buddy of mine, actually, he just went through a crash course for developing Solidity smart contracts. What would you say to anybody who just went through a similar course? What sort of direction would you give them to get on the cutting edge of blockchain development?
So I'm pretty biased in the way I view the crypto ecosystem. I don't think that I think there's a lot of problems at the infrastructure layer, that's at the blockchain layer. We have problems like scalability, interoperability, privacy, and they all need to be solved before the application layer blockchains can then become ubiquitous and then actually reach its potential. So I would not advise anyone to learn Solidity at this time. I would say pick up Rust and join us where we're deep dark in the mempool, hacking together blocks and trying to figure this stuff out, basically.
Cool. BrainJar, what's your advice?
Honestly, like if I was to be a developer right now, I would learn Rust, and then I would learn everything possible about ZK stuff, essentially. Because like there are some like really heavy hitter teams out there getting into the ZK space, and like I don't think anybody is really prepared for what ZK is going to bring about. And it's kind of a meme right now where like everybody just throws ZK at everything. But honestly, like we will see very, very clear examples of incredibly bullish applications getting built using ZK stuff.
Composable finance, you guys have your finger on the pulse of ZK?
Most definitely. Most definitely. But no alpha leaks on that one. No alpha leaks on that one.
All right. All right, guys. Well, it's always exciting to talk to you. Really looking forward to what you have at Polkadot Decoded. So just thanks again for everything you're building, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you, sir. This was great. Cheers.
Thank you, sir.